With great power comes great responsibility.
Compromise where you can. Where you can't, don't. Even if everyone is telling you that something wrong is something right. Even if the whole world is telling you to move. It is your duty to plant yourself like a tree, look them in the eye and say no. You move.
Never step onto the battlefield of ideas unprepared. Before you enter the fray, you need a plan. And there's no better place to get one than right here on Tactics with host Caleb Colquitt. The Situation Room goes live now on News Radio 1440.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for being with us here on Tactics, where speech isn't violence, tolerance isn't love, and disagreement isn't hate. Welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us today, and as always, we are going to start out with our coronavirus update, because the state has the Wuhan flu. We're taking it seriously, and I'm just going to prepare y'all ahead of time. This is not a good news day for us. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I don't want to be the one to tell you this, but it's my job to report the facts. And even though the past few days have actually been largely optimistic looking compared to what we were projecting, today was a pretty awful news day for the Yellowhammer State. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive in and look at some of the statistics here. We're going to start with the Alabama Department of Public Health's update and looking at their tracker, which has been updated for the most recent numbers. You can look there and see that 386 deaths have been confirmed in the state of Alabama. That's a pretty substantial uptick from yesterday. You've got 156 more than yesterday because, of course, yesterday's number was 230. 156 confirmed cases, brand new confirmed cases in one day. That's a lot. I mean, that's a lot. And you'll look there at the total tested, about 2,800. That's about 500 more than the 2,300 we had yesterday. But it nowhere accounts for the increase in numbers, because if you'll notice a pattern here, and this has been holding more or less true, that about 10% of those that have been tested in the state of Alabama, it jumped between like 9 and 11%, but pretty consistently every single day since we've been keeping track of this for a little over roughly 2 weeks now, the cases were always about 10% of whatever the number of people tested were. So comparatively, since we've been keeping track of it, it's never really strayed from that 10% margin. It jumped to a little over 15 today, which is something that is quite alarming. Now, there's a couple reasons why this may be happening. First of all, it's most likely not the results of the 500 new tests that were conducted today. It's more than likely the results of tests that had been taken from people previously started to come back. Because with the vast majority of the testing we're doing in the state of Alabama now, there's roughly a 24 to 48 hour waiting period on getting your results back. And that's something that luckily there are new tests that are being approved right now that have a pretty substantial success rate that only take about 30 minutes to a couple of hours. And hopefully we can get those around the state of Alabama as quickly as possible. But right now we're relying on the testing that has been in place for a couple of weeks now, where you gotta wait anywhere between 1 and 2 days. And so it's not likely that the 500 new tests that were conducted between today and yesterday in that 24-hour period yielded such high results of people. It's actually far more likely that we just got test results back from yesterday to confirm that a lot of the people that were tested from yesterday or the day beforehand actually did indeed have COVID-19. So that's the most likely explanation of what's going on now. And if you're looking at the local area that we're in right now, the area around Montgomery, the river region saw a significant spike today, which is not surprising considering the entire state saw a significant spike today. So Montgomery went from 9 to 13, so that's +4, which is almost a 50% increase. That's pretty alarming. Elmore County went from 6 to 9, so an increase of 3. That is a 50% increase for them. Watauga County saw a substantial increase because they went from having none to having 4. So your Prattville, your Marbury, your Billingsley, that county wound up going up when previously they had none. And Pike County also went from having 0 to having 1. So a plus 12 total for the counties in the river region. There's still a couple of counties surrounding us that don't have it, but that may just be because people haven't been tested, but we're just going by the numbers that we have right now. That's a plus 12 total, and that's quite a bit. That's more than we've seen in any single day of going from one to the other. So yesterday, it's unfortunate because we had all this good news. It looked like everything had flatlined. Maybe we had beaten the curve. And today, it definitely does not look like that. This may indeed be the exponential spike that we've been talking about. If you've been watching this show, you know that we've been talking about the exponential spike and the anticipation of that coming, just like it has in China and Italy. And so that's what we're looking at possibly right now. It seems as though, at least from Alabama's standpoint, we may indeed be looking at hitting that exponential spike. Now, if you're looking at the picture overall, America didn't necessarily see something at a rate quite this alarming yet, but it's very possible that it could be. It looks as though we're getting a question here from the audience. Yeah, also no increase in total tested. Well, there is an increase in total tested, but like I said, that increase of testing is only 500, which certainly wouldn't account for 156 new cases. And so it's more likely that we're just seeing an influx of cases, like I said earlier, of tests just coming back as opposed to it just being the new test. I'm sure that contributed some, but it seems unlikely that with only 500 new tests that 156 of those people actually tested positive. That just seems like a very unlikely thing based on the data that we've seen thus far. So I have, again, more unfortunate news that I have to report. That it seems as though we may have indeed had the first death in Alabama due to COVID-19. Now, this is not 100% confirmed, but we're just going off of the information that we have available to us at the time. Apparently, a part-time employee of the Jackson County Commission was confirmed to have COVID-19 directly before his death. Now, it could have been due to this. It likely was, but they're investigating it right now to confirm that that's actually what took place. This is a statement by Tim Guffey, the chairman of the Jackson County Commission, who would have been, on some level, I'm not sure if he was his direct supervisor or not, but somebody that was at least aware of this person and was his boss because this person worked part-time for Jackson County. So this is his statement by Chairman Tim Guffey. Quote, "The Alabama Department of Public Health has confirmed that the employee passed away after having contracted COVID-19. The employee worked in a department at the Jackson County Courthouse that did not require regular contact with the public. All county employees who worked in the same department have been notified, and none of them have reported any symptoms associated with the COVID-19 virus." Now, this doesn't mean necessarily that those other employees don't have the Wu flu, because as we've said, you can carry it around anywhere between a day to 4 days before you actually experience symptoms. So it's possible that these employees who have been notified about the situation do indeed have the virus and are carriers of it, which is why they need to be extremely cautious right now. Just like if you're sitting at home and you know that you've had contact with somebody that got this, you need to be extremely cautious and self-quarantine and make sure that you're not coming in contact with people and spreading this thing. But, looking at this and looking at their reaction to it, it is unfortunate that this took place. Luckily, based on this, it was not an employee that came in contact with the public on a regular basis. I'm not exactly sure what that means, and I'm not as familiar with the employment structure of the Alabama court system and the courthouses to be able to guess at what that might be. This may be somebody that was just a desk jockey, not to, degrade desk jockeys, considering I kind of am one. just saying that probably somebody that didn't have a lot of personal interaction with people, not somebody like, for example, a bailiff or a security guard. So it's probably something that, the very least, maybe they would have infected their former employees, but it is at least less likely that they infected the general public if they were not somebody that came in contact with people on a regular basis. So, as an explanation of why they're not counting this as an official death yet, here's a tweet from the Alabama Department of Public Health. We'll go ahead and look at that real quick. The Alabama Department of Public Health has not confirmed the death from COVID-19 at this time. ADPH continues to investigate cases of COVID-19 in Alabama. So, a couple things there. And by the way, I'm not trying to suggest that the Alabama Department of Public Health is trying to cover their own butts or trying to hide something from us. I'm just saying that seems like something that a lawyer wrote, which is not necessarily a bad thing, just an observation. So what probably is going on here is they don't want to jump the gun, and because of that, and because they don't want to right out and out say that for sure this was a death that was attributed to COVID-19, but they also don't want to ignore it. They made a very generic statement with virtually no information in it whatsoever to sort of allow people to know that, yeah, we're aware of it, but we're not confirming it just yet. As of right now, I have no reason to be suspicious of that or to suspect some ulterior motive. Maybe they have some kind of ulterior motive, like they're trying to keep the deaths from being recorded because they think it makes the state or them look bad. I don't know. But right now what they're doing is they're saying that we're looking into it, which is not a unjustifiable position to take right now. I know that right now, because everybody's in a heightened state of awareness, we're all very anxious. We want answers as soon as we can get them. Remember, this thing just happened a few hours ago. And so it is perfectly reasonable for the Department of Public Health to say, all right, let's look into it, see if it actually is a death because of this virus. Let's not jump the gun and just say, based on information, that that's what happened. Let's actually look into it ourselves and confirm this case. That's a very reasonable thing to have and a reasonable standard to hold. I get, and it's not just with the Department of Public Health, that we're all a little antsy right now, and that's understandable, but don't let our anticipation or our desire to know what's going on override our common sense or to accuse people of ill motives when there's no evidence for that, at least not yet. That's all I'm suggesting. Now, one other thing that I did want to mention in our update for today with this is that we really do need to pray for the state and pray for the family members of the person who has died, because regardless of whether he died because of COVID-19 or not, and he probably did, this is most likely Alabama's first death from the virus. Either way, that family has lost a family member, and so certainly pray for them and pray for our state and nation and our leaders, but more importantly, because I think it's important to pray for our leaders, pray for our people as well, that they'll make good decisions. And I actually do want to praise, and this is a rare occasion where you'll see me praise something that a government, and B, a institution that is associated with Alabama just did. But, you know, being a big Auburn fan myself, I want to give props to them handling this situation in a unique way. So the University of Alabama actually put out this tweet earlier, and you can see this here. And so it contains a short video, and this is Alabama football's Twitter feed. You can see this video, and if you want to look it up, it won't be hard to find on Twitter. Just go to Alabama football's Twitter feed. And I'm not going to play the video itself because it's just Coach Nick Saban basically repeating a whole bunch of things that we've already said on this program before, and a lot of people have been saying already, just things like, hey, stay at home, wash your hands. But the reason that I want to praise it is not because the information in it is terribly novel, and Nick Saban would probably tell you that if you were sitting right here doing an interview with me. The reason that it was a good idea is because I guarantee you this reached more people and had a larger impact on more people than I guarantee you the vast majority of people that just don't stay plugged in and aren't really dialed into the news there were an awful lot of people that were Alabama football fans that saw this that haven't really been paying attention to everything that's going on. I'm sure that they know about it. I'm sure that they're aware of it because unless you've been living under a rock, you don't have to be a news hound like me or somebody that constantly monitors the news to be at least somewhat aware of the situation, to know about Governor Ivey's mandate, that kind of thing. But, you have to give credit where credit is due. This was a unique thing and something that the University of Alabama concocted that probably is going to help a lot of people. There are people that will pay a lot more attention to Coach Saban than our governor, unfortunately. I mean, let's be honest. Governor Kay Ivey, her power of influence pales in comparison to Nick Saban's. And I would say that also to a great degree, not as much Gene Chizik Gus Malzahn. I don't know why I said Gene Chizik. Not as much as Gus Malzahn because he is not worshipped by his fan base the way that Nick Saban is. But this is a person that has a ridiculous level of influence over what happens in the state of Alabama, even more so than the governor. And, I props to Alabama for using that influence in a positive way to help give people good information and help them out with that. That's ultimately a good thing. So one of the things that I did want to say, kind of moving away from local politics and speaking to the national, once again, and I'm going to say a lot about this tomorrow because we're coming up short on time, so I'm just going to spend a few minutes on this. When it comes to the national relief and everything that's being debated and battered back and forth, I think that something that is important to understand here with the national, because there's a whole lot of people on the national stage that are very upset with both sides of Congress, which is understandable. I'm not going to talk about what I personally think should happen, at least for right now, because I'm going to save that for tomorrow's show. But I would issue a warning to those in Washington, D.C. Because not just because I try to keep my ear sort of pressed to the ground and see which way the political landscape is shifting and try to see what direction it's going because, I'm an observer of these things. This is something that I'm hearing from people that really don't have any interest in politics, that I know for a fact don't keep up with it. They probably haven't watched an actual news program in the past decade, that are coming out just absolutely furious, and they don't care whether it's Republican or Democrat or whatever. They're just absolutely disgusted with the way that Congress is handling this. And right now, it seems that a lot of that is coming from the Democrat side. But it would not surprise me to see exactly the same thing coming from the Republican side, where both sides are trying to utilize this crisis to reshape the government in the way that they see fit and trying to get a whole bunch of things that they want. There's a lot of things that the American people stay asleep on. There's a whole lot of things that the American people just don't pay that much attention to because they don't see it as something that directly impacts their lives. This is not one of those things. And I think that politicians, regardless of what side of the aisle they are on, they are playing with fire with this. Because it's kind of like, I think you don't have quite the outburst of patriotism, but it's similar to 9/11. This is a event that is somewhat similar to 9/11 in the sense that the entire country is watching and paying attention and is actually dialed into the news, which is something that is almost a once-in-a-generation event. And what's happening now, and I'm not saying these people are dialed in and study it as much as probably some of you as my listeners who have listened to the news and pay attention to this every single day. But what is happening is that the eyes are actually on our politicians and they're paying attention for once. And any politician on either side of the aisle that is trying to utilize this to benefit themselves politically and score political points, I think is going to get burned. And I normally don't say that. Because you'll know, I'll raise Cain with people. I'll talk about how I disagree with this or that when it comes to their policy proposals. But it's very rare that I say the American people are going to stand up and they're going to remember this, because I know 95% of the time they don't. And even when a crisis arises, and I'm using crisis in the way that the media defines it, which means just about everything, even when a crisis arises where it's a government shutdown or an impeachment proceeding or something like that, the American people normally, as a whole, not some of the people that are really dialed in, but as a general rule, they're not paying that much attention to it. It seems like, based on my own observation, that's not the case with this thing. And because of that, anybody that is even perceived as using this crisis to try to get their political wish list done, I think they're going to pay a very steep and real political price for this. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've been really surprised at some of the people that are actually paying attention to the news that I know normally don't. And I think that it is going to cause a significant problem for the Democrats if they continue to stall this thing, trying to get their pet projects in. And I think that the same rule goes for the Republicans. Now, granted, they haven't, at least based on the news coverage so far and what I've been able to see, what they've been trying to shoehorn in hasn't been nearly as obviously something that has nothing to do with the virus and something that would benefit their political buddies. But if they do, I think that they're going to pay a hefty political price for it as well. And what could happen is that both sides do that, and it winds up canceling itself out, that both sides get blamed for trying to shovel in a whole bunch of stuff that has nothing to do with actually helping Americans get through this. And that does not wind up looking good for them. So I'm issuing the warning now. And I think that it's actually a good thing. I wish that people were as dialed in to what's going on in the world, all the time as they are right now, to where there would be some level of accountability, but I'm just not seeing that most of the time. This is a rare occasion where I think they actually are. And I think the politicians ought to tread lightly because of that. And I think the fact that the politicians need to be afraid of the American people, that's a good thing. When the government is afraid of the citizens, there is liberty. When the citizens are afraid of the government, there is tyranny. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and wrap it up now. My church actually has a live stream going on, and it's starting at 6:30, so I need to go ahead and jump off there and jump off here and jump on there. So I'm going to do that. I invite you to do the same. If you don't have a church that's doing a live stream tonight, Dalrated Church of Christ, you can check us out on YouTube, and you can watch over there. It's one of the ones that I follow, so if you're a subscriber to my YouTube channel, you can find it on my list of people that I subscribe to. But that's where I'm going to be headed. I encourage you to do the same. If you don't have a church that you're going to be watching their live stream and want to see a Bible class tonight, I'm about to go do that. So in the meantime, stay the course, friends. Tactics is a production of News Radio 1440 and Cumulus Media Montgomery. Opinions expressed on this program are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Cumulus Media or our business partners. Graphics by Jessica Dawson. Video production by Jackson Dean. Broadcast studio provided by Faulkner University. Location studio provided by the Dalrated Church of Christ.